An artifact can rewrite history before you even know its name. This video explores 25 out-of-place artifacts that defy everything we think we know about our timeline. You will see objects that should not exist, found where they could not possibly be, forcing a complete re-evaluation of human history. How did a complex astronomical computer exist in ancient Greece? Why does a medieval map show a continent buried under ice for millions of years? Each discovery suggests lost chapters in our story, filled with forgotten knowledge or civilizations that vanished without a trace. Are you ready to question the history you were taught? The true power of these objects lies not in their age, but in their impossible context. An out-of-place artifact is a contradiction made solid, a piece of evidence that simply should not be. It is not merely an ancient tool or a weathered statue, but something that appears far too advanced for its accepted time period, or is found in a geological layer or location that defies all logical explanation. Think of discovering a stainless steel screw sealed inside a lump of coal formed millions of years before humanity existed. The object itself is not mysterious, but its presence in that specific place, at that specific moment in deep time, creates a paradox. It forces a direct confrontation between a physical discovery and the entire established narrative of history. This tension is at the heart of every genuine out-of-place artifact. Mainstream archaeology and history operate on a timeline, a carefully constructed story of gradual human progress. A find that contradicts this story presents a profound challenge. Some researchers, like author Michael Cremo, have argued that the scientific community has at times overlooked or dismissed such evidence to preserve the standard model, a concept he explores in works like Forbidden Archaeology. Whether one agrees with that perspective or not, it highlights the high stakes of these discoveries. They are not just curiosities, they are potential keys to forgotten chapters. Understanding this definition is our essential first step. It separates the truly bewildering historical puzzles from objects that are simply old, or from later hoaxes and misidentifications. An out-of-place artifact must be authenticated, its context meticulously documented, leaving experts with a genuine mystery that resists easy fitting into the textbook. It is this strict criteria that makes the following 25 objects so compelling. They are not just anomalies, they are invitations to look at our past with entirely new eyes and to question what we are so certain we already know. From the quiet depths of the Aegean Sea, a shipwreck surrendered a secret that redefined ancient genius. In the year 1901, sponge divers working near the island of Antikythera stumbled upon the remains of a Roman-era vessel, its hull filled with marble statues and bronze treasures. But one object, a lump of corroded green bronze about the size of a large book, would prove more valuable than all the art combined. For decades, this strange, encrusted mass sat in a museum, a curious footnote. Then researchers began to look closer. X-ray and later advanced imaging technologies would peel back the layers of time and corrosion, revealing the truth. Inside was a masterpiece of precision engineering, a clockwork universe in miniature. We now call it the Antikythera Mechanism. Dated to around 100 years before the Common Era, this device is a breathtaking anomaly. It consists of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, meticulously cut by hand, housed within a wooden case that bore inscriptions and dials on its face. When the hand crank on its side was turned, these gears would move in complex differential relationships, driving pointers that tracked the motions of the sun, the moon, and known planets across the zodiac. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, and one of its dials even counted down the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. This was not a simple calendar. It was a dynamic, mechanical model of the heavens, a portable planetarium of staggering complexity. The profound challenge it presents is one of historical context. According to the standard timeline of technological progress, machinery of this intricacy should not appear again until the great cathedral clocks of medieval Europe over 1,000 years later. The craftsmanship implies a previously unknown level of scientific instrumentation in the Hellenistic world, a school of thought that combined profound astronomical understanding with equally profound mechanical skill. Who built it? For whom was it intended? Was it a unique prototype, or was it one of many, a glimpse into a lost tradition of ancient engineering that simply did not survive the fires of library burnings and the fall of empires? The ship that carried it was bound for Rome, likely carrying loot from the Greek world. Perhaps it was a diplomatic gift, a demonstration of knowledge so advanced it was considered a treasure on par with gold. The Antikythera Mechanism forces a quiet but monumental revision. It tells us that a chapter in the story of human invention, one detailing the creation of precise analog computers, was written far earlier than our history books ever recorded. That chapter was then lost, sinking into the dark waters off a Greek island, waiting centuries for us to recover it and begin to read its impossible, gear-driven text. While the Antikythera Mechanism reveals a lost zenith of mechanical complexity, another artifact suggests a different kind of ancient power altogether. In the 1930s, workers constructing a railway near Baghdad uncovered a collection of simple clay jars, each about the size of a man's hand. They seemed unremarkable, typical of the Parthian or Sasanian eras, dating from roughly 250 years before the Common Era to 650 after. But inside one of these jars, researchers found a puzzling assembly. A rolled copper cylinder was fixed inside with an asphalt seal, and within that cylinder rested an iron rod. The jar itself showed signs of corrosion, as if it had once held a liquid. To a modern eye, the configuration is instantly recognizable. It looks like a battery. When an acidic electrolyte, something as simple as vinegar or fermented grape juice, is poured into the jar, a chemical reaction occurs between the two different metals. This creates a small but measurable electric potential, a flow of electrons. Tests have shown a single jar can produce just over 1 volt of electricity. While that may not seem like much, connecting several of these cells together in a series, as one might with modern batteries, could generate a more substantial charge. The immediate question is both obvious and revolutionary. Was this a 2,000-year-old power cell? Mainstream archaeology offers alternative explanations. Some suggest these vessels were simply secure containers for sacred scrolls, with the iron rod acting as a spindle. Others propose they were used for electroplating, a process where a thin layer of gold or silver is transferred onto another metal using an electric current. Small, gilded artifacts from the same period and region do exist, though no direct link to these jars has been proven. Yet the electrochemical properties are an undeniable fact of their construction. The choice of materials, copper and iron in an acidic medium, is precisely what creates a galvanic cell. This was either a staggeringly fortunate coincidence, or it was intentional. If it was intentional, the implications quietly unravel a thread of our technological timeline. The official history of electricity credits Alessandro Volta with creating the first true battery in the year 1800. The Baghdad jars predate his work by nearly 2 millennia. What might this primitive current have been used for? We can only speculate. Perhaps it had a ceremonial purpose, creating a mild, tingling sensation during religious rites to simulate a divine touch. Some researchers have suggested a potential medical application, a very early form of electrotherapy to soothe muscle pains, a practice not scientifically explored again until much later periods. The true purpose may be lost, but the artifact itself remains a persistent, quiet hum in the background of history. It does not shout of a lost advanced civilization, but it whispers a compelling possibility that a basic, practical understanding of electrical principles was discovered, utilized, and then forgotten, long before our modern world thought to plug itself in. Sometimes a mystery is not found in a museum or a shipwreck, but in a simple stone picked up from the ground. In the spring of 1961, 3 rock collectors were exploring the dry, rugged landscape of California's Coso Mountains. They were searching for geodes, those unassuming rocks that hide beautiful crystal cavities within. One of them selected a promising lump, and with the familiar crack of a geologist's hammer, they split it open. But instead of glittering quartz or amethyst, they found something entirely different and utterly bewildering. Inside the stone was a rigid, man-made object. At its center was a circular metal rod, 2 millimeters thick. This rod was surrounded by a hexagonal ceramic or porcelain collar, which was itself encased in a crumbling copper sheath. The entire assembly was embedded in a hard, shell-like layer of hardened clay, pebbles, and fossil shells. To anyone familiar with 20th century machinery, the resemblance was immediate and shocking. It looked exactly like a spark plug from a modern internal combustion engine. The collectors took their find to a local gem and mineral association, where it caused a sensation. Initial examinations, including X-rays, seemed to confirm the object's mechanical nature. The central metal rod appeared to have a tiny spring or helix at one end, a feature found in some early spark plug designs. The real controversy, however, erupted when the surrounding stone matrix was analyzed. A geologist who examined the specimen reportedly stated that the nodule had taken a minimum of 500,000 years to form around the object. This single claim catapulted the Coso artifact from a curious oddity into the realm of the impossible. If that dating were accurate, it meant this piece of machinery was sealed inside solid rock long before anatomically modern humans walked the earth, in an era when our ancestors were likely using simple stone tools. The implications are staggering. It suggests the presence of a technological civilization in the deep prehistoric past, one capable of metallurgy, ceramics, and precision engineering, only to vanish without leaving any other trace in the fossil or archaeological record. It is the ultimate chronological challenge, a direct contradiction to the entire narrative of human development. Skeptics, however, offer a far more mundane explanation. They propose the object is precisely what it appears to be, a champion spark plug from the early 1920s, a period when miners and prospectors used such engines in the area. They argue the rock is not a true geode, but a hard mineral concretion, a lump of calcium carbonate and iron oxide that can form relatively quickly around an object left in mineral-rich water. In this scenario, the spark plug fell or was discarded, and over a few decades, a convincing stone shell grew around it, fooling initial observers. Proponents of the mystery counter that the X-rays show internal components, like that possible spring, that do not match known spark plug models of the era. The debate, much like the stone itself, has hardened over time. The artifact disappeared from public view decades ago, making modern reanalysis impossible. This leaves us with a haunting question that is more about perception than proof. Does the Coso artifact represent a genuine, world-altering anomaly, a literal fossil of forgotten technology? Or is it a perfect lesson in how our minds can shape what we see, turning a discarded piece of 20th century machinery into a relic of a lost world, simply because it was found inside a stone? Either answer carries a profound weight, reminding us that the past is not always what it seems, and that sometimes the most earth-shattering secrets might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right hammer to fall. A different kind of hammer was found not in a workshop, but in a layer of stone older than the dinosaurs. In the year 1936, a couple walking along a creek near London, Texas, noticed an odd piece of rock with a bit of wood protruding from it. They took it home and cracked it open, revealing a complete iron hammer with a well-preserved wooden handle. entirely encased within the solid stone. The rock itself was identified as a Cretaceous limestone formation, a layer of earth dating back well over 100 million years to an age when giant reptiles ruled the planet. This simple tool, now known as the London hammer, presents a paradox of staggering proportions. The iron head is remarkably pure, showing a low carbon content and a lack of the slag inclusions typical of early, primitive ironworking. Its shape is symmetrical and functional, the work of a competent smith. The wooden handle is partially fossilized, yet it remains intact, having somehow survived the unimaginable eons sealed inside the rock. The immediate, instinctive question is the obvious one. How does a clearly man-made object, a tool from human history, end up inside stone that formed millions of years before humans, or even primates, evolved? Mainstream geology offers a potential resolution. Critics suggest the hammer is not actually from the Cretaceous period, but is a far more recent artifact, perhaps from the 19th century. They propose the hammer was lost or discarded near the creek, where it became lodged in a pocket of softer, soluble limestone. Over time, through a natural process called concretion, minerals in the water precipitated out and hardened around the object, creating a new, convincing stone shell that mimicked the much older bedrock. In this view, the hammer is an example of a false inclusion, a younger object trapped within what only appears to be ancient matrix. Yet proponents of the mystery point to details that complicate this tidy explanation. They note the specific chemistry of the concretion and its firm bond to the hammerhead, arguing such a process would typically leave clear, telltale layers or inconsistencies, which some examinations claim are not present. The fossilization of the wood, a process that normally requires immense time and specific mineral-rich conditions, also adds to the puzzle. If the concretion formed quickly around a recent tool, how did the wood begin to fossilize so thoroughly? The London hammer, therefore, does more than just present an oddity. It forces a deeper consideration of our own interpretive frameworks. It asks us to examine the limits of geological processes. How quickly can certain concretions truly form under unique conditions? Could our methods for contextualizing and dating stone formations sometimes create impossible archaeological scenarios, making a few hundred years look indistinguishable from 100 million? This is not necessarily a call to rewrite all of deep time, but a reminder that the Earth's processes are complex and occasionally capable of creating profound illusions. The artifact sits at the crossroads of two disciplines, archaeology and geology, each with its own rules for reading the past. One sees a tool that cannot be that old. The other sees a stone that must be that old. The hammer is the tangible point of conflict, a quiet, persistent enigma resting in a Texan creek, challenging us to decide which story written in stone we choose to believe. But not all ancient mysteries are hidden within stone. Some were placed in tombs as gifts for the afterlife. In the shadow of the Great Step Pyramid at Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologists uncovered a small, unassuming wooden object, no larger than a human hand. Catalogued simply as a bird figurine, it was dated to around 200 years before the Common Era and stored away with countless other artifacts. For decades, it drew little attention, just another charming representation of the natural world from a culture that revered it. Yet when someone finally looked at this Saqqara bird not as an ornithologist might, but with the eye of an aeronautical engineer, everything changed. Its proportions were all wrong for a living creature. The wings were perfectly straight, rigid, and set at a precise dihedral angle, like those of a modern aircraft designed for stability. The body, or fuselage, was cylindrical and smooth. Most tellingly, it featured a distinct vertical component at the rear, not shaped like a bird's tail feathers, but like the vertical stabilizer, the rudder, of a fixed-wing glider. This was no stylized ibis or falcon. Its design spoke the language of aerodynamics, not biology. The implications were so startling that researchers decided to put the theory to the test. They constructed accurate, scaled-up models of the Saqqara artifact, careful to replicate its exact angles and weight distribution. When launched, these models did something extraordinary. They flew, not with the flapping, erratic motion of a bird, but with the smooth, stable, long-distance glide of a purpose-built aircraft. The little wooden object possessed inherent aerodynamic qualities, its center of gravity perfectly balanced to allow it to catch the air and sail forward. This performance was not a lucky accident of a child's toy. It was the result of a specific and sophisticated understanding of principles like lift and stability. So what were the ancient Egyptian artisans actually depicting? The mainstream and most accepted interpretation is that it was a ceremonial object, perhaps a child's toy or a symbolic representation of a bird of prey, with the vertical tail piece simply being a stand. Yet even within that framework, the choice to deviate so radically from the elegant, curved forms of actual birds in favor of these sharp, technical lines remains puzzling. This leads to the more speculative yet profoundly intriguing question: could this have been a model of something real, not a living bird but a machine? The idea pushes us into a realm of fascinating possibilities. Were the craftsmen inspired by observation of advanced technology that has since been lost to history, a fleeting glimpse of a civilization capable of flight that left only this cryptic echo in wood? Or does the artifact point to a different kind of knowledge, a deep, intuitive study of natural phenomena that we have since categorized separately? Perhaps they were meticulously observing the flight patterns of certain seeds, like the maple samara that spins like a helicopter blade, or the way a certain bird's wings lock into a glide, and abstracting those principles into a pure, functional form. The Saqqara Bird does not demand we believe in ancient airports, but it does insist we reconsider the depth of empirical observation and technical experimentation that might have been happening outside the grand narratives of pharaohs and pyramids. It represents a quiet, alternative current of thought, one focused on the mechanics of the world. This small artifact asks us to look past its symbolic purpose and see it as a potential blueprint, a whisper across millennia suggesting that the dream of flight and the intellectual pursuit of its principles may have taken wing in human imagination far earlier than the stories of Daedalus or the sketches of Leonardo da Vinci would have us believe. A map can be a window into a lost world, but the Piri Reis Map feels more like a key to a door that should not exist. Drawn on gazelle skin by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis in the year 1513, this fragmentary world map is itself a historical treasure, blending known coastlines of Europe and Africa with the newly discovered shores of the Americas. Yet its true mystery lies not in what it shows of the known world, but in a small, tantalizing section at its southern edge. There, the map depicts a landmass with a distinct, jagged coastline, labeled as the southern continent. For centuries, this was considered a speculative flourish, a cartographer's guess. Then, in the 20th century, a startling realization dawned. That southern coastline bears an uncanny and deeply troubling resemblance to the Queen Maud Land region of Antarctica. The trouble is profound. Antarctica was not officially sighted by human eyes until the year 1820, over 300 years after this map was drawn. Even more impossible, the continent has been entombed under a mile-thick sheet of ice for at least several million years. Its true, rocky coastline has been completely invisible to humanity for all of recorded history. So how could a 16th century admiral have charted it? Piri Reis himself provided a clue in extensive notes on the map. He wrote that he compiled it from many source charts, including some that dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, over 1700 years prior. He was not claiming to have explored these southern lands himself. He was acting as a librarian, copying information from far older documents that had come into his possession. This claim transforms the mystery. If his sources were genuinely ancient, they suggest a pre-classical civilization possessed not only the ships to voyage into the frigid southern oceans, but also the cartographic skill to accurately survey a coastline. And they must have done so in a remote epoch when Antarctica was free of ice, allowing its true shape to be seen and mapped. The most chilling evidence comes from modern technology. In the mid-20th century, seismic surveys began to penetrate the Antarctic ice, using sound waves to map the bedrock hidden beneath. When researchers compared these subglacial topographic maps to the coastline on the Piri Reis fragment, the correlation was startling. The bays, peninsulas, and mountain ranges suggested by the old map seemed to align with the actual, hidden geography of the continent. It was as if the map was not showing the ice-covered surface, but the land itself, the way it looked before the Great Freeze. The implications of this are almost too large to hold. They hint at a cycle of civilization far older than Sumer or Egypt, a maritime culture of global explorers who charted the planet during a warm interglacial period, perhaps tens of thousands of years ago. Their maps or copies of copies somehow survived through libraries in Alexandria or Constantinople, finding their way to an Ottoman admiral's desk. Skeptics offer alternative explanations. They suggest the southern land on the map could be a distorted amalgamation of South American coastlines, a common error of the period, or pure conjecture that by chance resembles a hidden reality. They argue that the correlations with subglacial topography are selective and overstated, seeing patterns where none were intended. Yet the coincidence remains haunting. The Piri Reis Map does not give us answers. It presents a profound and elegant question mark. It forces us to wonder if the history of human exploration is not a straight line of progress from the age of discovery outward, but a circle where knowledge is gained, lost in a cataclysm of ice or time, and then painstakingly rediscovered millennia later. The map is a potential message in a bottle, cast adrift from a world we have utterly forgotten, waiting for us to learn how to read its impossible contours. Deep within the isolated mountains bordering China and Tibet, a story emerged that would become one of archaeology's most enduring and controversial legends. In 1938, according to the account, a Chinese expedition led by Dr. Kai Pu-te was exploring a system of remote caves in the Bayeux-Ula region. What they reportedly found there was unlike any typical burial site. Scattered across the cave floors were hundreds of unusual stone discs, each roughly 9 inches in diameter, with a perfectly round hole in the center and a fine, double groove spiraling out from it to the rim, resembling a kind of stone phonograph record. Buried nearby were the skeletal remains of individuals described as having strangely proportioned, large skulls and small, fragile frames. The discs, which became known as the Dropa Stones, were said to be covered in minuscule, unknown hieroglyphic characters etched along the spiral grooves. The narrative takes its most extraordinary turn with the claimed translation of these glyphs. A professor named Tsum Nui allegedly succeeded in deciphering the script in 1962, revealing a catastrophic story. The inscriptions told of a people called the Dropa, whose spacecraft crashed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. Stranded and unable to repair their vessel, the survivors took shelter in the caves. The text was presented as their tragic chronicle, a record of their plight and their attempts to peacefully coexist with the local mountain tribes who initially feared them. If true, the Dropa Stones would be the ultimate out-of-place artifact, not merely challenging the human timeline but inserting an entirely new, interstellar chapter into it. They would be physical evidence of ancient contact, a literal message in stone from visitors from the stars. The story captured the global imagination, becoming a foundational pillar for ancient astronaut theories and popular culture. It asks a profound and unsettling question. Could some of the inexplicable objects in our past be not from a lost human civilization, but from somewhere else entirely? Mainstream archaeology and science, however, uniformly dismiss the entire account. No reputable institution has ever examined the discs and the key figures, Dr. Kai Pu Te and Professor Tsumam Nui, cannot be verified in standard academic records. Skeptics argue the entire episode is an elaborate, layered hoax, possibly originating from a Soviet science fiction story that was later reported as fact. They identify the disc's description as matching common by discs, ancient Chinese ceremonial jade artifacts with a central hole, though typically without spiral grooves or microscopic writing. The unusual skeletal remains are explained as likely misidentified or exaggerated finds of early human inhabitants of the region. The legend persists precisely because it taps into a deeper human curiosity, a longing to know if we are alone and if our history is intertwined with a grander cosmic drama. It challenges our place in the universe not with complex machinery, but with a simple, haunting narrative of being stranded far from home. Whether a modern myth or a suppressed truth, the Dropa Stones serve as a cultural touchstone. They remind us that some mysteries are powerful not because of the evidence they present, but because of the profound questions they force us to ask about our origins and our destiny among the stars. The stones, real or not, have already fulfilled one purpose. They have carved a permanent groove in our collective imagination, a spiral of wonder that leads from a remote cave directly to the infinite possibilities of the cosmos. A single silver coin can whisper of journeys across an ocean, found not in a Scandinavian hoard or a European market, but nestled in the soil of a Native American coastal settlement in Maine. This small artifact carries a weight far beyond its size. Known as the Maine Penny, it is a Norwegian silver coin minted sometime between 1065 and 1080 of the Common Era. Yet it was discovered at the Goddard site, a bustling trading village occupied by the ancestors of the Wabanaki peoples, in a layer dated to the 12th century. This simple chronology creates a breathtaking historical bridge. The coin is at least 400 years older than Christopher Columbus's first voyage, and it was resting on the other side of the Atlantic centuries before he was even born. Its presence is a quiet, physical echo of the Norse sagas, the epic poems that spoke of Viking explorers like Leif Erikson sailing west to a place they called Vinland, a land of wild grapes and new shores. For a long time, these sagas were considered legends, heroic myths with only a kernel of truth. Then, in the 1960s, the archaeological discovery of a Norse settlement at Elance Ox Meadows in Newfoundland proved the Vikings did indeed reach North America. The Maine Penny, found just a few years later, adds a compelling new layer to that story. It suggests the Norse did not merely land and leave, but that their presence, or the objects they carried, rippled out through existing indigenous trade networks that span the continent. The coin itself is a penning, a common denomination of its time, likely too low in value to have been intended for trade across the Atlantic. This leads to the most plausible and fascinating explanation. It probably did not arrive in Maine because a Viking personally handed it to a Wabanaki trader on that beach. Instead, it almost certainly traveled south from the known Norse camps in Newfoundland through long-established, intricate chains of Native American exchange. A Norse explorer might have used a handful of such coins in a transaction with an indigenous group in the far north. That group, valuing the shiny silver not as currency but as a rare and exotic material, would have traded it southward to another community, and then another, over generations. Each exchange would have been a story, the coin passing from hand to hand over hundreds of miles, until it finally came to rest at the Goddard site, a major coastal hub where goods from the interior met those from along the shore. This journey makes the Maine Penny not less significant, but more so. It is not proof of a Norse village in Maine, but evidence of something perhaps more profound, the deep and sophisticated interconnectivity of the pre-Columbian world. The coin became embedded in a vast, ancient economic and social system that was already in place, a system capable of moving a curious object from the frozen reaches of Canada down to the temperate coast of New England. It challenges the old textbook image of isolated continents waiting for European discovery. Instead, it paints a picture of a dynamic hemisphere where ideas, materials, and people were moving long before 1492. The Maine Penny is therefore a testament to marginalized history. It proves that cross-cultural contact and exchange in the Americas were more complex, more widespread, and began far earlier than the traditional narrative allows. This tiny piece of silver is a key that unlocks a bigger story, one not of a single dramatic landing, but of countless quiet meetings, trades, and the slow, relentless weaving together of human histories across vast and unexpected distances. Buried alongside the bones of an ancient giant, a small metal object silently defied the entire history of industry. In 1974, construction workers digging a trench near the Meuse River in Aiud, Romania, made a puzzling discovery. Roughly 35 feet down, beneath multiple layers of ancient sediment, they uncovered the massive fossilized remains of a mastodon, a prehistoric relative of the elephant that vanished at the end of the last ice age. But resting right beside those ancient bones was something that did not belong. It was a wedge-shaped, heavily corroded metal object about 8 inches long, 5 inches wide, and 3 inches thick. Initially thought to be a stone tool or perhaps a piece of an axe head, it was cleaned off and sent for analysis. The results were impossible. The object was composed of an alloy primarily made of aluminum, a metal that defines our modern world. This is the core of the Aiud artifact's profound mystery. Aluminum is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, but it is never found in a pure, metallic state in nature. It is always tightly bound with other elements, most commonly as bauxite ore. To liberate the pure, silvery metal requires a complex and energy-intensive industrial process called electrolysis, which was not invented until the year 1886. Before that, aluminum was rarer and more valuable than gold, so the question screams for an answer. How did a largely aluminum object end up sealed in a geological layer alongside the remains of a creature that died over 20,000 years ago, in an era when humanity is believed to have been using only stone and bone? Further laboratory tests only deepened the riddle. The alloy was found to contain 11 other elements, and the object was covered in a remarkably thick layer of aluminum oxide, a crust consistent with extreme age, as if it had been lying in that wet, mineral-rich soil for millennia. Its shape, a symmetrical wedge with 2 perfectly circular holes of different sizes, suggests a manufactured purpose, perhaps as part of a larger mechanical assembly. The mainstream scientific response offers a pragmatic, if unsatisfying, explanation. Skeptics propose the object is simply a fragment of modern machinery, likely a tooth from a heavy-duty excavator bucket or a piece of mining equipment from the late 19th or early 20th century. They argue it could have fallen into the pit during earlier, unrecorded excavation work and become naturally buried over a few decades, coincidentally settling near the ancient bones. This is a common phenomenon in archaeology, where recent items can intrude into older layers, creating false associations, yet proponents of the mystery counter with the context. The mastodon bones were found in a consolidated layer of sand and gravel, a stratum that geologists assert had been undisturbed since the Pleistocene epoch. The object was not lying loosely on the surface. It was embedded within this ancient matrix, seemingly part of the same depositional event that buried the animal. If it were a modern intrusion, how did it sink through solid, compacted layers to rest precisely alongside 20,000-year-old fossils without leaving a visible disturbance in the sediment above it? The Aiud wedge, therefore, presents us with a classic and elegant standoff. It is a material science paradox made physical. On one side, we have the uncontested fact of aluminum's industrial history. On the other, we have a compelling geological and archaeological context that places it in deep prehistory. This artifact does not ask us to believe in spaceships or lost super-civilizations, but it does force a humbling consideration. Could there have been an isolated, forgotten breakthrough, a fleeting discovery of a metallurgical technique that was lost just as completely as the mastodon itself? Perhaps an ancient artisan, by sheer accident with the right materials and conditions, stumbled upon a primitive method to produce a metallic aluminum-like substance, creating a single, anomalous object that survived while the knowledge behind it perished. The wedge offers no clear answers, only a heavy, metallic silence. It rests at the intersection of what we know for certain about our technological ascent and the unsettling possibility that the path of invention is not a straight, unbroken line, but a trail with forgotten forks, dead ends, and perhaps a few scattered, inexplicable artifacts left behind to mark the way. 3 billion years is a span of time so vast it defies human imagination. It is an epoch when the Earth itself was a young, violent world, its atmosphere toxic, its continents still forming. Life, if it existed at all, was nothing more than microscopic, single-celled organisms in the primordial seas. In this inconceivably ancient context, nestled within mineral deposits in South Africa, miners began uncovering tiny, round objects that seemed to belong to a different reality entirely. They are called the Klerksdorp Spheres, and their appearance is startlingly artificial. Each one is a perfect sphere, often no larger than a walnut, made of a bluish metallic alloy. Most unnervingly, many of them are etched with 3 parallel grooves that run neatly around their equator, as if machined by a precision lathe. They were found embedded in layers of pyrophyllite, a mineral dated to a staggering 3.8 billion years old. To hold one is to hold a contradiction, a seemingly manufactured artifact from a time before multicellular life, before dinosaurs, before even the simplest plants. The immediate, instinctive reaction is to see design. The symmetry, the grooves, the material all whisper of intention. It is a powerful image, the idea of a forgotten, perhaps non-human, intelligence leaving behind these metallic marbles as a signature from the dawn of the planet. They push the concept of an out-of-place artifact to its absolute limit, not merely challenging a few thousand years of history, but suggesting a cycle of technological civilization operating on a geological timescale, rising and falling in epochs so remote their very memory is written in stone. Could these be remnants of a civilization that flourished when the Earth was still young, only to be wiped clean by cosmic catastrophe or the slow grind of tectonic forces, leaving behind only these enigmatic, indestructible spheres as evidence of their passage? Geology, however, offers a different, equally fascinating narrative. Mainstream science classifies the Klerksdorp Spheres as natural concretions. They are likely composed of the minerals pyrite or limonite, which can crystallize in spherical forms under specific, high-pressure conditions deep within the Earth's crust. The famous parallel grooves, according to this explanation, are not machined at all, but are the result of crystal twinning, a natural process where the internal atomic structure of a mineral causes it to form with precise, geometric planes that can manifest as external ridges. In this view, the spheres are not artifacts, but examples of nature's own profound capacity for order and symmetry, a kind of mineralogical artistry that happens to mimic the products of a machine shop. The process is rare but not impossible, a testament to the complex and beautiful physics of crystal growth under extreme duress over millions of millennia. This leaves us with a profound philosophical puzzle, rather than just an archaeological one. The Klerksdorp Spheres force a confrontation between perception and process. They challenge our ability to distinguish between the designed and the accidental in the deep past. Our human brains are exquisitely tuned to recognize patterns and agency, a trait that helped our ancestors spot predators in the grass. But this same skill can betray us when faced with the raw, unfathomable creativity of geological time. We see a grooved sphere and think tool, bearing, artifact, because those are the only references our relatively brief history provides. Nature, with 3 billion years to work, can produce forms that perfectly echo our own inventions, not through imitation, but through the blind, relentless application of physical and chemical laws. So what are we to make of them? They serve as a humbling reminder of the scale of deep time, a scale where the words ancient and modern lose all meaning. Whether natural marvels or genuine anomalies, their value is undeniable. They compel us to question the very boundaries we set between the natural world and the world of intelligence. If natural processes can create something that looks so deliberately crafted, it asks us to reconsider what we might be overlooking in the fossil record, or what we might be misinterpreting in our own rush to find makers behind every mysterious form. The Klerksdorp Spheres, therefore, are more than objects, they are a lens. Looking through them, we see either a ghost of a civilization lost to the ages, or the breathtaking, artistic power of a planet that was forming perfect, grooved spheres in the dark long before the first eye evolved to see them. Both possibilities expand our understanding of this world and our place within its long, long story. A different kind of gallery holds images that defy not just time, but biology itself. In the arid valleys near Ica, Peru, a local physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera began collecting a vast array of stones in the 1960s. These were not ordinary rocks, but riverbed stones meticulously engraved with a breathtaking, impossible panorama of scenes. The collection grew to number in the tens of thousands, each stone etched with fine lines depicting a world that never was, according to conventional science. Humans are shown riding atop long-necked dinosaurs like domesticated cattle, hunting fierce creatures like Tyrannosaurus rex with simple spears, and using tools that look like telescopes to study the stars. Other carvings show what appear to be advanced medical procedures, including detailed depictions of what could be heart transplants and cesarean sections, performed with precision instruments. The artist or artists had a confident, flowing style, and the sheer volume of the collection suggested a monumental effort to record a forgotten history. Dr. Cabrera became the stone's passionate advocate, proposing they were created by an ancient, advanced civilization that coexisted with dinosaurs, a civilization that possessed knowledge lost to the ages. His theory was a direct challenge to everything established about the timeline of life on Earth, suggesting a narrative of human origins far removed from the standard evolutionary model. It was a story that captured the imagination of many who longed for evidence of a grander, more mysterious human past. The stones seemed to offer a tangible, physical library of that lost world, a counter-history carved in stone. The allure was powerful, presenting a visual manifesto for alternative histories where humans were not newcomers, but ancient lords of the earth, walking alongside giants and mastering sciences we would not rediscover for millennia. This narrative, however, soon met the rigorous scrutiny of archaeological method. Investigators quickly found a critical flaw, a complete absence of provenance. The stones were not excavated from a documented, sealed archaeological layer. They were brought to Dr. Cabrera by local farmers who claimed to find them in caves and tunnels. When pressed, one of these farmers later admitted to creating the stones himself, using modern engraving tools and then aging them by baking them in cow dung to give them a patina of antiquity. He stated he carved whatever images the doctor wanted to see, often inspired by comic books, textbooks, and popular science magazines. For mainstream archaeology, this confession closed the case. The Ica Stones were a modern hoax, a lucrative cottage industry fueled by the desires of collectors and enthusiasts. Yet to dismiss them entirely as a simple fraud is to miss their deeper, more enduring significance. They stand as one of the most potent cautionary tales within the study of anomalous artifacts. They perfectly illustrate the powerful, two-way relationship between belief and evidence. The stones did not emerge in a vacuum. They were created in response to a market, both economic and intellectual, hungry for proof of forbidden archaeology. They represent a profound human tendency, the desire to physically hold an answer to the great unanswered questions of our past. When the official record feels incomplete or unsatisfying, there is a powerful impulse to fill those gaps, even if the filling must be manufactured. The Ica Stones, therefore, are culturally significant not as ancient artifacts, but as modern relics of our own yearning. They are a mirror reflecting our collective longing for a past that is more dramatic, more connected to lost wisdom, and more defiant of the established narrative than the one we have been given. They remind every serious researcher and every curious observer of the paramount importance of provenance, the documented story of an object's discovery. Without that chain of custody, even the most spectacular find becomes a story without an anchor, vulnerable to our hopes and susceptible to our deceits. The stones serve as a permanent lesson, carved not by ancient hands but by contemporary ones, that in the quest to rewrite history, we must first be scrupulously honest about the origins of the very evidence we use to write it. The desert floor itself can become a canvas for mysteries meant for a different kind of eye. Stretching across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Lines are not objects you can hold, but a landscape transformed into a monumental question. Created by the Nazca culture between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 after, these geoglyphs are shallow trenches scraped into the dark desert surface to reveal the lighter earth beneath. From ground level, they appear as meaningless grooves, dusty paths wandering aimlessly across the gravel. But ascend to the height of a nearby hill, or better yet, take to the air, and the true vision unfolds. Those random lines coalesce into staggering, precise forms, a vast gallery etched into the earth itself. There are geometric shapes, miles-long triangles and trapezoids, perfect spirals, and immense straight lines that run arrow-straight to the horizon. And then there are the figures, over 70 of them, depicting animals and plants with elegant, flowing lines, a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider, a monkey with a coiled tail, a whale, even a humanoid figure often called the astronaut due to its large, round head. These designs are colossal, some over 1,200 feet long, so large they can only be truly appreciated from a vantage point high above the desert. This simple fact is the heart of their enduring mystery. Why would a people without any known means of flight create art they could never see? The standard archaeological explanations are compelling and rooted in the culture's known practices. Many researchers believe the lines served as sacred pathways for ritual processions, walked by priests or pilgrims during ceremonies to invoke life-giving water from the parched landscape. The animal figures likely represented deities or constellations, connecting the people to the spiritual forces governing rain and fertility. Their precision demonstrates not alien technology, but remarkable skill with simple tools, wooden stakes, and ropes, combined with a profound understanding of basic surveying techniques passed down through generations. A team could have easily scaled up a small model using a grid system, creating a giant blueprint on the desert floor. The purpose was likely deeply spiritual, a form of landscape architecture meant to communicate with the gods, not with aircraft. Yet the visceral impact of seeing them from the air invites more speculative wonder. The sheer scale and the necessity of an aerial perspective to comprehend the whole design naturally lead to a tantalizing, if unproven, question. Could they have been intended as signals for someone or something that could fly? This idea, while popular in alternative theories, is not necessary to appreciate the line's true challenge to our modern perspective. Their real defiance of the timeline is not technological, but sociological and intellectual. They represent a staggering communal achievement that speaks of a highly organized society capable of planning and executing projects that would take years, if not generations, to complete. This was not the work of a lone artist, but of a sustained cultural will, a shared vision so important that dedicating immense human labor to scraping the desert itself was a worthy endeavor. The lines challenge our often fragmented, short-term modern mindset by demonstrating a different relationship with time and place. They show a civilization thinking in monumental scales, both in space and in duration, embedding their beliefs directly into the land in a permanent, deliberate statement. We look down from our airplanes and helicopters, marveling at the shapes, but we are still learning to see from the Nazca point of view, from the ground looking up, connecting the lines to the mountains on the horizon and the stars in the night sky. The mystery of the Nazca Lines, then, is not really about who they were for, but about what they meant. They are a testament to human capacity for collective purpose and a reminder that some of our ancestors chose to write their most important messages not on parchment or stone, but on the very skin of the planet, in a script so large it patiently waits for us to find the proper distance to begin reading it. Within the sacred darkness of an Egyptian temple, a stone carving illuminates a fierce debate. In the crypts of the Hathor temple at Dendera, a detailed relief shows a scene that feels startlingly out of time. Two figures are depicted holding up a large, elongated object, shaped unmistakably like a modern glass bulb or pear. Inside this bulb, a snake stretches its body in a straight line from one end to the other, its head pointed toward the rounded tip. This serpentine form is held in place by a support that resembles the stem of a flower. The entire assembly is connected by a cable-like line to a box, upon which sits a kneeling god, and this box is then tethered to a tall, pillar-like object that some interpret as a capacitor or an insulator. To a person living in the electrical age, the interpretation is instantaneous and shocking. It looks exactly like a diagram of an incandescent light bulb, with a snake representing the glowing filament, the bulb being the glass enclosure, the box as a power source, and the pillar as a means of controlling the current. The figures could be priests or technicians, demonstrating the operation of this device. The implications are profound, suggesting the ancient Egyptians might have possessed, or at least understood the principles of electric lighting, using a technology like the hypothesized Baghdad jars as batteries to power sacred lamps deep within their windowless tombs and temples. This vision transforms the pyramids and subterranean chambers from places of symbolic darkness into spaces that could have been literally illuminated, a practical application of lost physics. Mainstream Egyptology, however, reads this same image through an entirely different lens, one of mythology and symbolism. Scholars identify the bulb not as a technological device, but as a lotus flower, a sacred symbol of creation and rebirth in Egyptian cosmology. The snake emerging from it is not a filament, but the deity Harsomptus, a manifestation of the sun god, being born from the primordial waters represented by the lotus. The box is interpreted as the Jed pillar, a symbol of stability, and the overall scene is a well-known religious motif depicting the moment of cosmic creation, the emergence of light and life from the chaotic void. In this view, the carving is not an instruction manual, but a theological statement, a representation of a spiritual truth using the established symbolic language of the culture. This is the core of the Dendera debate, a perfect case study in how we interpret the past. It centers on a fundamental question of perspective. Are we, children of the electrical age, unconsciously projecting our own technological framework onto an ancient artistic convention, seeing light bulbs only because that is the dominant symbol of illumination in our world? Or could the priests of Dendera have been doing the opposite, encoding a sophisticated understanding of physical principles within the protective layers of sacred symbolism, preserving a dangerous or heretical knowledge of electricity within the safe confines of temple art? This is not merely an argument about one carving, it is a clash between two ways of seeing. One approach insists on understanding artifacts within their full cultural and textual context, where every element aligns with known myths and practices. The other allows for the possibility of esoteric knowledge, of a secret tradition that operated alongside mainstream religion, using symbolic doublespeak to hide advanced concepts from the uninitiated. The relief does not provide a definitive answer, it provides a Rorschach test. What you see in those carved lines reveals as much about your own assumptions about ancient history as it does about the intentions of the artists. It challenges us to hold two contradictory ideas in mind at once: the beautiful, coherent system of Egyptian religious art, and the tantalizing, eerie resemblance to a technology that would not be reinvented for millennia. Perhaps the greatest insight from Dendera is not about electricity at all, but about the human mind's timeless desire to represent the invisible forces of the universe, whether we call them the gods of creation or the spark of electrical charge, and to carve that understanding into stone for the ages. Scattered across the fertile river delta of Costa Rica, a landscape holds a silent stone riddle. Hundreds of massive spheres, carved from hard granite or gabbro rock, rest in fields near ancient village sites and even in the yards of modern homes. These are the stone spheres of the Diquís, ranging from the size of a bowling ball to colossal orbs over 6 feet in diameter and weighing up to 16 tons. Their surfaces are astonishingly smooth, their shapes approaching geometric perfection in a world without precision instruments. Created by the pre-Columbian Diquís culture between the years 300 and 1500 of the Common Era, they are not out of place in time, but they are profoundly out of step with our expectations of what that time was capable of. They represent a different kind of mystery, one that fits within the accepted archaeological timeline, yet defies our understanding of the engineering methods available within it. The Diquís were a sophisticated people, known for their intricate goldwork and complex social structures. They were not a lost super-civilization from a forgotten age, but a regional culture whose achievements are still being uncovered. This context makes the spheres not less impressive but more intriguing. They were not imported by outsiders or left by ancient astronauts. They are a genuine, homegrown accomplishment. And that is the core of the technological puzzle. How did a culture without metal tools, without the wheel, and without draft animals quarry, shape, move, and place these immense stone balls with such breathtaking precision? The granite is incredibly hard, yet the spheres show consistent, symmetrical curvature. The mainstream archaeological explanation involves a patient, multi-step process. Artisans likely selected boulders from riverbeds, then used other, smaller stones of even harder material to peck and grind away at the surface, slowly chiseling the rough shape. They may have used heat, repeatedly building fires against the stone, and then dousing it with cold water to create thermal fractures that could be worked. To achieve the near-perfect roundness, they might have constructed a simple but effective jig, suspending the sphere on a bed of smaller stones or within a frame, allowing them to rotate it methodically while comparing its curvature against a fixed measuring cord or a template. This theory is logical and grounded in known ancient techniques, but it does not diminish the monumental effort, the generations of sustained knowledge, and the sheer communal will it would have required. Each large sphere represents thousands of hours of coordinated, skilled labor, a staggering investment for a purpose we can no longer clearly see. That lost purpose is the second layer of the enigma. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? The spheres have been found in alignments, sometimes in groups, and near what appear to be important communal or elite residential sites. Some researchers propose they functioned as astronomical markers, their arrangements pointing to solstice sunrises or significant stars, turning the landscape into a celestial calendar. Others see them as powerful status symbols, the sheer difficulty of their creation broadcasting the authority and resources of a chief or a lineage. A single, perfect sphere in a village plaza would have been an undeniable statement of power and communal identity. Another theory suggests they served as territorial markers, denoting clan lands or sacred spaces. The truth may have been a combination of these ideas, with the spheres holding different meanings in different contexts. Their silent presence today speaks of a society that valued abstract perfection, that invested its greatest efforts not in fortifications or monuments to the gods, but in these enigmatic, beautiful objects of pure form. They chose to express their worldview through geometry made solid. The stone spheres of Costa Rica challenge us in a subtle but profound way. They are not anachronistic in date, but they are anomalous in execution. They force us to expand our definition of ancient engineering prowess, reminding us that precision does not require digital readouts and that monumental achievement does not require iron or steel. It requires vision, patience, and a deep, culturally transmitted understanding of material and technique. When we look at a modern ball bearing, we see the product of a machine lathe. When we look at a Diquís sphere, we are seeing the product of a human lathe, where generations of knowledge and muscle memory were the guiding tools. They stand as a testament to a different path of technological development, one where the goal was not efficiency or mechanical advantage in the modern sense, but the embodiment of an ideal, a perfect shape pulled from the heart of a mountain and placed gently upon the earth for reasons that now whisper to us only through their flawless, silent curves. A piece of cloth holds an image that has resisted explanation for centuries. The Shroud of Turin is a length of linen 14 feet long, bearing the faint front and back imprint of a man who appears to have suffered crucifixion. The wounds match the biblical accounts of the Passion, from the scourge marks on the back to the puncture in the side. For the faithful, it has long been venerated as the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ, a sacred relic of profound spiritual significance. For historians and scientists, however, it presents a material mystery that transcends any single belief system, a physical puzzle that challenges our timelines of both technology and human understanding. The central question is stark and simple. Is this a medieval artifact created by human hands, or could it be a genuine first-century object, a kind of primitive photograph from the dawn of the Common Era? The debate reached a seeming crescendo in 1988, when radiocarbon dating was performed on a small sample of the cloth. The results from 3 independent laboratories converged on a date range between 1260 and 1390 of the Common Era, squarely in the medieval period. To many, this was conclusive proof the shroud was a forgery, an elaborate devotional object created centuries after the events it purported to document. The case appeared closed by the cold logic of atomic decay, yet the shroud refused to surrender its mystery so easily. Critics of the carbon dating pointed to potential contamination. The cloth had survived a devastating fire in the year 1532, where it was scorched, drenched with water, and handled extensively during its rescue. Could the fire have introduced carbon particles that skewed the dating results toward a more recent time? Furthermore, the sample taken was from a corner edge, an area that would have been handled most often over the centuries, potentially layered with oils, sweat, and repairs that modern cleaning protocols might not have fully removed. This opened a small but legitimate scientific door, a question of whether the tested material truly represented the original first-century linen. But the deeper, more baffling challenge lies not in the cloth's age, but in the image itself. How was it made? The faint, sepia-toned figure is not painted. There are no pigments, no brushstrokes, no directionality. The image resides only on the very topmost microfibers of the linen threads, a superficial change caused by a delicate caramelization or oxidation of the cellulose, as if the cloth was lightly scorched. The coloration is incredibly shallow, yet it encodes three-dimensional information, with darker tones corresponding to areas that would have been closer to a body, like the nose and hands, and lighter tones for recessed areas. This is not something a medieval artist, no matter how skilled, could have achieved with known materials or techniques. It behaves, in essence, like a photographic negative, a concept utterly foreign to the 14th century. This has led researchers down a path of extraordinary hypotheses. Some propose the image was formed by a brief, intense burst of radiation, perhaps a form of proton or neutron flux emanating from a body within the cloth. Others suggest a complex Maillard reaction, a chemical process between amines from a body and the carbohydrates of the linen, accelerated by a specific environmental catalyst. These are not ideas drawn from medieval science. They are concepts from modern physics and chemistry, applied retrospectively to explain an effect that simply should not exist on a cloth from that era. The Shroud of Turin, therefore, sits at a unique and tense intersection. It is a point where faith seeks historical affirmation, where science confronts an anomaly it cannot yet replicate, and where history grapples with an object that fits neatly into neither the medieval nor the ancient world. It challenges our confidence in dating methods, reminding us that contamination and context are everything. More profoundly, it challenges our narrative of technological progress by presenting an effect with no clear inventor or mechanism within its accepted time period. Whether one sees it as a sacred relic or a phenomenal unsolved puzzle, its power endures. It forces a humbling admission about the limits of our knowledge. We can date the linen, we can analyze the fibers, but we cannot yet explain how that haunting image came to be, leaving us with a silent, linen-bound question that continues to develop in the darkroom of history. A 200-pound slab of grey stone sits at the heart of a different American story, one written in cryptic runes, discovered in 1898, tangled in the roots of a tree on a Minnesota farm. The Kensington Runestone presents a narrative carved in rock. Its inscription, written in Scandinavian runes, tells a harrowing tale of Norse explorers from Vinland, 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on a journey of discovery from the west. The text dates their expedition to the year 1362 and ends on a somber note, speaking of 10 men red with blood and dead, a possible allusion to conflict. It is a Viking cry for help or a record of tragedy, etched not on the coast of Newfoundland but over 1,000 miles inland, deep in the North American continent. If genuine, this stone would shatter our understanding of Norse exploration, proving their voyages westward continued for centuries after Leif Erikson and reached far into the interior, interacting with the continent's indigenous peoples in ways we have only begun to imagine. The implications would be monumental, rewriting a chapter of pre-Columbian history to include sustained European presence long before Columbus. The academic world, however, has largely responded with profound skepticism. Most linguists and historians point to clear anachronisms. The runic forms used are a mix, some archaic and some more modern, in a combination not seen on accepted medieval runestones in Scandinavia. The language itself contains grammatical elements and spellings that feel oddly contemporary. The prevailing consensus is that the stone is a clever, heartfelt hoax created by Scandinavian immigrants in the late 19th century. In this view, it was a piece of homeland myth-making, a way for new Americans to carve their own ancient legacy into the soil of Minnesota, connecting their modern plows to the prows of legendary Viking ships. It was a creation of nostalgia and identity, not a genuine artifact from the 14th century. Yet the stone refuses to be dismissed so easily. persistent studies, particularly geological ones, have chipped away at the certainty of the hoax theory. Examinations of the weathering in the carved grooves suggest a great age, with mineral deposits and erosion patterns that some geologists argue could not have formed in a mere few decades. The specific type of rock, greywacke, is not native to the immediate farm area, meaning someone would have had to transport it from elsewhere to plant it, a considerable effort for a prank. These physical clues introduce a note of genuine scientific debate, creating a small but stubborn space where the possibility of authenticity lingers. This is where the Kensington Runestone transcends being merely a potential fraud or a genuine relic. It becomes a powerful symbol of how out-of-place artifacts intertwine with cultural identity. For the local community in Kensington and for many Minnesotans of Scandinavian descent, the stone is real history, a tangible link to a bold, exploratory past that validates their place in the American story. It represents a counter-narrative to the dominant national myth that begins with English colonists on the eastern seaboard, offering an older, more northerly, and more adventurous origin point. The stone thus embodies a profound conflict, not just of evidence but of narratives. On one side stands academic consensus, built on linguistic analysis and a cautious interpretation of the historical record. On the other stands persistent local lore, supported by ambiguous geological data and a deep human desire for connection to the land. The Kensington Runestone challenges us to ask who gets to write history and whose stories are validated by institutions. It shows how an artifact can become a vessel for community pride and a focal point for challenging a simplified national timeline. Whether a medieval message or a modern masterpiece of folk art, its true power may lie in its ability to hold two competing truths in tension, reminding us that the past is always a story we choose to tell, and sometimes we choose to tell it in stone. Beneath the clear, blue waters off Japan's southernmost island lies a landscape that should not exist. The Yonaguni Monument is a sprawling complex of massive stone blocks, some the size of buildings, resting silently on the ocean floor. Divers exploring the site encounter a surreal vista, terraced platforms that drop like giant steps, wide avenues running between sheer walls, and pillars that stand in silent rows. Most striking are the sharp, 90-degree angles and perfectly straight edges that define many of the formations, alongside features that uncannily resemble carved staircases, archways, and even what looks like a crude human face gazing out from the stone. This is not a shipwreck or a scattered collection of artifacts, but an entire architectural scene, submerged under roughly 100 feet of water. The immediate, overwhelming impression is that of a sunken city, a forgotten metropolis claimed by the sea. The monument's location provides a crucial clue to its potential age. During the last ice age, when global sea levels were dramatically lower, this area would have been dry land, a coastal plateau. As the glaciers melted between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago, the waters rose, slowly drowning this landscape. If the structures are human-made, they would have been constructed in that distant epoch, a time when mainstream archaeology tells us humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers, not builders of monumental stone complexes. This single fact challenges the entire narrative of Pacific civilization, suggesting a settled, sophisticated culture capable of large-scale engineering in an era we have long considered prehistoric. The debate over Yonaguni is a classic and elegant clash between two ways of seeing the world. Geologists point to the bedrock itself, a sedimentary sandstone known to fracture along straight planes due to tectonic stresses. They demonstrate how powerful tidal currents in the area can erode and undercut stone, creating platforms and terraces that appear artificial. The seemingly carved features, they argue, are the result of natural weathering, where softer layers of rock wear away faster than harder ones, leaving behind shapes that trick the human eye into seeing design. In this view, the monument is a spectacular example of nature's own architecture, a geological masterpiece that mimics the ruins of a city. Yet for those who see the hand of humanity, the assemblage of features defies simple coincidence. The right angles are too numerous, the terraces too level, the parallel channels too straight. They point to specific formations, like a tall obelisk that appears to have separated from a cliff face, but now stands perfectly upright nearby, or a large, flat area that looks deliberately cleared like a plaza. The argument is one of probability. Could natural processes alone create such a dense collection of geometric forms in one location? Or does the cumulative effect point toward intelligent modification? This underwater enigma does more than pose an archaeological question. It invites us on a philosophical dive. It asks us to examine the boundary between the natural world and the crafted one, especially in an environment as dynamic and powerful as the sea. Our minds are wired to find patterns, to see faces in clouds and castles in rock formations. Yonaguni tests that ability to its limit, presenting a canvas so grand and so ambiguous that it becomes a Rorschach test for our view of the ancient past. Whether a natural wonder or a drowned citadel, its true significance is undeniable. It stands as a permanent, aqueous monument to the power of geological change and the fragile nature of human history along coastlines. It whispers of a time when the map of the world looked very different, and of the possibility that some of our ancestors' greatest works now lie silent beneath the waves, waiting for the tides to slowly reveal their secrets, one grain of sand at a time. While underwater ruins challenge our view of prehistoric architecture, a book sitting in a library vault challenges our very understanding of written knowledge. The Voynich Manuscript is a soft, heavy whisper of a mystery, a 240-page codex crafted from fine vellum in the early 15th century. To the casual eye, it is a beautiful, if eccentric, medieval book. Its pages are filled with flowing, elegant handwriting in an alphabet of strange, looping characters that have never been seen anywhere else in the world. This unknown script forms words and sentences with a statistical structure that suggests a real language with patterns of repetition and grammar, yet it corresponds to no known tongue, living or dead. The text flows around and through a stunning series of illustrations, but these pictures offer no clarity, only deeper confusion. There are pages of fantastical plants, lush and detailed, with roots, leaves, and flowers that do not match any known botanical species on Earth. Other sections show intricate astrological charts with unfamiliar constellations and zodiac symbols arranged in bizarre, non-standard patterns. Perhaps most perplexing are the biological sections, which depict small, nude female figures, often immersed in or connected by networks of tubes and vessels to strange, fluid-filled containers, suggesting a mysterious, alchemical understanding of the human body. The entire volume feels like a scientific or medical textbook from a parallel universe, a systematic encyclopedia of a nature we do not recognize, written in a language we cannot read. This is its profound out-of-place nature. It is not an object of impossible age or material, but a vessel of impossible content. It appeared in Renaissance Europe with no precursor, no draft, and no contemporary reference, a fully formed island of alien knowledge in a sea of familiar historical records. For over a century, it has been the ultimate puzzle for the world's greatest cryptographers. Teams from both world wars, famous code breakers, and in recent years, sophisticated artificial intelligence have thrown their considerable power at the manuscript. They have applied every technique, from frequency analysis to pattern recognition algorithms designed to decode unknown languages. The results are always the same. The text resists, it shows internal consistency, yet it defies translation. Some argue it is an extremely clever, meaningless hoax, an elaborate fabrication designed to fool a wealthy patron. But the cost and effort involved in producing such a lavish, lengthy work solely as a prank seems immense for the era. Furthermore, the statistical properties of the text are incredibly difficult to fake without modern computational tools, suggesting there is a genuine linguistic system at its heart. Others propose it is written in a constructed language, or in a known language but with a complex cipher that has yet to be cracked. The most haunting possibility is that it represents a genuine body of knowledge, perhaps herbal, astronomical, or therapeutic, from a culture or tradition that was completely obliterated, leaving this single, cryptic copy as its only legacy. This book does not sit in a tomb or a cave. It rests on a shelf at Yale University, available for anyone to study. Its accessibility makes its impenetrability all the more maddening. It is a direct, polite, and beautiful affront to our assumption that the past is ultimately knowable, that with enough study, we can understand what our ancestors thought and wrote. The Voynich Manuscript suggests that some chapters of the human story may have been written in a script we have simply lost the key to, not because the key is hidden, but because the entire language has vanished from the earth. It is a reminder that history is not just about the facts we have recovered, but about the vast, silent libraries of thought and observation that have been permanently checked out, leaving behind only the ghost of their indecipherable card catalogue. The carvings on a stone can map the very beginning of life. In a private collection in Colombia rests a small, enigmatic object known as the genetic disc. Crafted from a hard, black stone called lyddite, it is roughly the size of a large coaster, with a central hole perhaps for a cord or spindle. Its surface is not decorated with gods or animals, but with a series of precise, intricate carvings that seem to tell a biological story. To a modern biologist, the imagery is startlingly familiar. There are clear depictions of sperm cells with their distinctive oval heads and long, whipping tails. Other carvings show what appear to be fertilized eggs in various stages of cellular division, the zygote splitting again and again. Further along the disc's circumference, the forms evolve into shapes unmistakably resembling developing human embryos and fetuses, complete with the curled posture and defining features of different gestational stages. This is a visual narrative of human conception and growth, a subject that requires magnification and microscopy to observe directly. Yet this disc is attributed by some collectors to pre-Columbian cultures, potentially created thousands of years before the invention of the lens. The immediate, controversial implication is that an ancient society possessed a detailed, accurate understanding of human embryology, knowledge that mainstream science would not systematize until the 19th and 20th centuries. This artifact does not arrive with clear archaeological provenance, and it is often associated with a collection of other anomalous objects that fuel speculative theories. Many academics dismiss it outright as a modern creation or a clever forgery, an object designed to appeal to our fascination with ancient mysteries. Without a documented excavation site and stratigraphic context, its age cannot be verified, placing it in a category of artifacts that are intriguing but historically unanchored. Yet, even as a conceptual challenge, the genetic disc poses a profound philosophical question that transcends its disputed origins. If we momentarily entertain the possibility that it is genuinely ancient, how could such knowledge exist? One path of thought leads away from technology and toward a different kind of knowing. Could intense spiritual or shamanic practices, involving deep trance states and ritual plant medicines, have granted certain individuals visionary insights into the processes of life and creation? In this framework, the biological stages would not be observed through a lens, but perceived through an altered state of consciousness, interpreted as sacred knowledge of the life force, and then recorded symbolically in stone. Another possibility is one of lost empirical observation, perhaps through generations of midwifery, animal husbandry, and even the examination of miscarriages. ancient healers pieced together a remarkably accurate, though not microscopic, understanding of developmental sequences. This practical, hands-on knowledge, passed down through oral tradition and ritual art, could have encoded real observations about the beginnings of life long before the cellular theory was established. The disc, therefore, is not necessarily evidence of ancient microscopes, but a potential testament to the power of sustained, culturally important observation. It challenges the standard timeline not with gears or metal, but with ideas. It suggests that the trajectory of scientific understanding may not be a straight, ascending line from ignorance to enlightenment. Instead, it might be a spiral where deep insights are gained, then lost in the upheavals of time, only to be laboriously rediscovered generations later through entirely different methods. The genetic disc, real or not, serves as a powerful metaphor for this cycle. It asks us to consider how much profound knowledge about the natural world might have been held in the minds and traditions of cultures that left no written records, their wisdom preserved only in ambiguous symbols that we are still learning to read. Whether an ancient textbook or a modern puzzle, it turns a simple stone circle into a mirror, reflecting our own assumptions about how knowledge is born, how it grows, and how easily it can be forgotten. A perfect cube of iron should not be waiting inside a lump of coal. In 1885, workers at the Wolfsegg coal mine in Austria split open a large seam of tertiary period coal, a deposit formed roughly 20 to 30 million years ago. As the black rock fractured, something small and metallic tumbled out. It was a solid, heavy block, nearly a perfect cube, just over 2 inches on each side, with a deep groove circling its midsection and rounded edges. The miners were baffled. Their first logical assumption was that they had found a meteorite, a piece of space rock that had fallen to Earth in the distant past. It was sent for analysis, and the results were far more puzzling than anyone expected. The Wolfsegg iron, as it came to be known, was not a meteorite. Advanced testing revealed its composition was a peculiar form of cast iron, an alloy of iron with carbon and small amounts of other elements. More specifically, it was a type of steel, a material that requires deliberate, high-temperature smelting and refining processes. This was not a raw, natural metal. Its structure and chemistry pointed directly to human, or at least intelligent, manufacture. Yet here it was, sealed inside a coal bed that predated the evolution of humans by millions of years. The conundrum is absolute and elegant. On one side, we have a material fact, a man-made alloy. On the other, we have a geological fact, a 20-million-year-old context. The two cannot peacefully coexist within our standard timeline. The artifact seems to whisper of a civilization, not from a forgotten chapter of human history, but from a completely different volume of Earth's story, one written in the Oligocene epoch when giant mammals roamed, and presumably no one was operating a blast furnace. The groove around its center suggests it was part of a larger assembly, perhaps mounted on an axle or held in a fixture. Was it a component from some unimaginably ancient machinery, a fossil not of bone but of industry? The mainstream scientific explanation seeks to resolve this tension by questioning the context. Much like with the London hammer, skeptics propose the cube is not truly 20 million years old, but a much more recent object that somehow became embedded in the coal. They point to the history of mining itself. Could the cube have been dropped or discarded by a miner in a previous century, perhaps a piece of mining equipment or a tool fragment, and then through a combination of mud, pressure, and chemical processes, become naturally cemented into a new, convincing lump of coal-like material? This process, called concretion, can happen relatively quickly in the right mineral-rich environment, creating a false geological context that appears impossibly ancient. It is a compelling argument, a reminder that the Earth is constantly reworking and repackaging its own debris. Yet, proponents of the mystery highlight the original account. The cube was not found loose in a mine shaft. It was reportedly embedded within a solid seam of coal, removed from deep within a large block before it was brought to the surface. This suggests it was not a surface contamination, but an inclusion, an object that was present when the coal itself formed from compressed prehistoric vegetation. If that is true, the concretion theory becomes harder to sustain. The Wolfsegg iron, therefore, does more than present an oddity. It forces us to examine the very nature of evidence. It tests the limits of our interpretive frameworks. When we find a human-like artifact in an inhumanly old layer, we are faced with a choice. Do we question the reliability of the geological context, trusting our knowledge of human technological history? Or do we question the completeness of that human history, allowing for the staggering possibility of a forgotten industrial age lost to deep time? The cube offers no answers, only its heavy, metallic silence. It rests as a perfect symbol of the out-of-place artifact dilemma, a stark geometric shape that refuses to fit neatly into the round holes of our historical understanding, challenging us to wonder if the story of civilization is far shorter or inconceivably longer than we have ever dared to believe. A different kind of textile weaves together history and mystery with every stitch. The Bayeux Tapestry is an immense 70-meter-long embroidery, a vivid narrative chronicling the Norman conquest of England in the 11th century. It is a masterpiece of medieval storytelling depicting armies, ships, and the pivotal Battle of Hastings with remarkable detail. In one famous panel, King Harold sits upon his throne, his courtiers pointing anxiously toward the heavens. There, streaking across the sky, is a star with a fiery tail, unmistakably Halley's Comet as it appeared in the year 1066, an omen recorded by history. This celestial event is clearly identified and fits perfectly within the tapestry's historical framework. Yet, for some modern observers, the sky in other scenes holds a different kind of secret. Scattered elsewhere in the embroidered narrative are strange, circular objects, sometimes shown hovering above landscapes or near buildings. These discs, often rendered with a central dot and radiating lines, bear no label. To a contemporary eye conditioned by decades of popular culture, their shape is instantly evocative. They look undeniably like the classic image of an unidentified flying object. This interpretation transforms the tapestry from a medieval chronicle into a potential document of ancient aerial phenomena, suggesting that the Normans and Saxons witnessed more in their skies than just comets. The mainstream historical explanation, however, is firmly grounded in the artistic conventions of the time. Scholars identify these objects as highly stylized representations of celestial bodies, like stars or planets, used by the embroiderers to signify divine observation or to mark the passage of time. Alternatively, they could represent shields or roundels, symbolic decorations common in Romanesque art, placed in the sky as a compositional element rather than a literal depiction. The tapestry is not a photograph. It is a symbolic narrative where objects are often flattened and abstracted to fit the visual language of the era. This creates a fascinating crossroads of interpretation. On one path, we have a strictly contextual reading, where every element is understood through the lens of 11th century art and symbolism. On the other, a more speculative path invites us to consider if the artists were recording something they could not explain, using the only visual vocabulary they had, a vocabulary of shields and stars, to represent something truly anomalous. This divergence highlights a crucial and often overlooked dimension of the out-of-place artifact phenomenon. The Bayeux Tapestry reminds us that these theories are not born solely from physical objects buried in the earth, but can emerge from the reinterpretation of known historical art. Our modern perspective, filled with images of spacecraft and theories of ancient astronauts, acts as a powerful filter. We project our own anxieties, curiosities, and cultural fascinations onto the ambiguous symbols of the past, seeing disc-shaped objects where medieval viewers saw the hand of God or a heraldic device. This is not a dismissal of curiosity, but a call for self-awareness. It underscores that the label out of place is not an inherent property of an object or image, but a judgment we make based on our current understanding of what belongs where. The tapestry, in all its embroidered complexity, becomes a mirror. It reflects not only the events of the Norman conquest, but also our own desire to find echoes of our contemporary mysteries in the art of previous centuries. It challenges us to ask a subtle but profound question. When we look at an ancient depiction of something strange in the sky, are we seeing what the artist intended to show, or are we seeing the shape of our own wonder projected onto the cloth of history? The true value of this ambiguity is its lesson in humility, reminding us that every era has its own framework for the extraordinary, and sometimes the most out-of-place thing in an ancient artifact is our own modern gaze. Gold can capture more than wealth. It can hold a shape that seems to leap across centuries. In the highlands of ancient Colombia, the Quimbaya civilization flourished between the years 300 and 1500 of the Common Era, master artisans in gold work. Among their treasures are small, intricate pendants and ornaments, many depicting animals with elegant, streamlined forms, but a particular group of these objects stops the modern viewer cold. To an eye accustomed to the silhouettes of the 20th century, they look uncannily like sleek jet aircraft or delta wing fighters. These are the Quimbaya Artifacts, and they present a quiet, elegant riddle about perception itself. The objects are typically 2 or 3 inches long, cast in tumbaga, a gold and copper alloy. They feature a main fuselage-like body, a rounded cockpit-like canopy at the front, and most strikingly, a pair of swept-back wings that angle sharply toward the rear. Some versions even include what appears to be a vertical tail fin, a stabilizer, completing the profile of a modern aerodynamic vehicle. The resemblance is so immediate and so visceral that it sparks an irresistible question. Could these be stylized representations of ancient flying machines, evidence of lost technology, or even forgotten contact? The mainstream archaeological interpretation offers a grounded and culturally rich answer. Experts identify these artifacts as highly stylized zoomorphic figures, representing the abundant wildlife of the region. They are likely depictions of birds like the bar-winged wood quail, or of certain insects or even fish, all creatures the Quimbaya would have observed daily. The swept-back wings could easily represent the folded wings of a bird at rest, and the rounded front section a stylized head. The vertical tail might be a simplified representation of tail feathers. In this view, the artifacts are beautiful examples of artistic abstraction, where the essential, flowing lines of an animal are reduced to a symbolic, wearable form. This explanation fits perfectly within the known world of the Quimbaya, a people who express their connection to nature through metal. Yet the controversy persists precisely because of those clean, aerodynamic lines. The shapes do not merely resemble animals, they seem to obey principles of stable flight. When modern engineers have created scaled-up, weighted models of these artifacts based on their precise proportions, some of these models have demonstrated remarkable glide characteristics. They fly smoothly when launched, their center of gravity and wing placement creating inherent stability in the air. This performance raises a fascinating secondary possibility, one that does not require runways or engines. Could the Quimbaya artists, through generations of observing birds, insects, and seeds in flight, have intuitively arrived at shapes that are inherently aerodynamic? This is not a claim of hidden technology, but of profound empirical observation. An artisan might notice that a certain seed pod spins gracefully to the ground, or that a particular bird's wings have a specific angle when it soars most steadily. Through trial and error in shaping clay or wax models before casting in gold, they could have unconsciously refined a form that pleased the eye precisely because it echoed the efficient, beautiful laws of physics that govern movement through air. The artifact then becomes a cultural intersection of art, nature, and hidden physics. This case study ultimately challenges the viewer more than it challenges history. It illustrates the powerful role of our own cultural lens. We live in an age dominated by machines that fly, so when we see a swept wing and a tail fin, our minds immediately jump to what we know, to jets and spacecraft. We project our own technological framework onto an ancient artist's work. The Quimbaya lived in an age dominated by the natural world, so they likely saw the essence of a bird or a fish, abstracting its life into a permanent golden symbol. The artifact itself has not changed, only the eye of the beholder. This does not make our wonder invalid, but it asks for a thoughtful pause. It reminds us that inspiration can flow from two deep wells: direct observation of the living world and the legacy of prior human invention. The Quimbaya artifacts sit precisely at this crossroads, inviting us to disentangle our assumptions. Are we seeing a secret they encoded, or are we hearing our own centuries' echoes in their art? Perhaps the truest answer honors both perspectives, recognizing that the human mind, whether ancient or modern, has a genius for finding the most efficient, most beautiful forms in the universe, whether they are discovered in the flight of a bird or the blueprint of a machine. These small gold objects, then, are not proof of ancient airports, but they are proof of a timeless human dialogue with the air itself, a conversation cast in metal that continues to soar across the gulf of 1,000 years. A small square of carved stone holds a figure frozen in contemplation, discovered in the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, one of the great cities of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. This steatite seal dates to around 2,500 years before the Common Era. The image is intricate and powerful. At its center sits a humanoid figure with horns upon its head, positioned in a cross-legged posture that feels deeply serene. Surrounding this central character are various animals: a tiger, an elephant, a rhinoceros, and a buffalo. To the modern eye, especially one steeped in the imagery of science fiction, a provocative interpretation leaps forward. The horned figure is not sitting on the ground, but is enclosed within a distinct, angular frame. Some see this frame as a cockpit, the animals as controls or displays, and the entire scene as a depiction of an ancient vehicle, perhaps even a spacecraft piloted by a being in a meditative state. This reading transforms a piece of ancient art into a startling technical diagram, a record of advanced technology from a time of early Bronze Age cities. Mainstream archaeology, however, hears a very different story in this same carved stone. Scholars identify the figure as an early representation of a divine concept, a prototype for what would later evolve into the Hindu deity Shiva in his aspect as Pashupati, the lord of all animals. The cross-legged position is not a pilot's seat, but a yogic posture, a sign of spiritual mastery and connection to the natural world. The horned headdress is a symbol of sacred power, seen in many early cultures, connecting the figure to the vitality of the wild. The animals encircling him represent his dominion and harmony with all living creatures. In this view, the seal is not a manual, but a meditation, a spiritual statement about humanity's place within the web of life, carved by an artisan for administrative or devotional purposes. This single artifact, the Mohenjo-Daro Seal, perfectly encapsulates a fundamental tension in the study of out-of-place objects. It demonstrates how these theories often arise not from the object itself, but from the lens through which we choose to examine it. We are children of the machine age. Our world is defined by vehicles, interfaces, and engineered environments. When we encounter an ancient symbol that feels even vaguely familiar, our minds instinctively reach for the closest modern analogy. An angular frame becomes a cockpit, A symbolic posture becomes a pilot's chair. A collection of animals becomes a control panel. This is not deception. It is a natural function of human perception, a pattern-matching brain trying to make sense of the unfamiliar by relating it to the known. The resulting dialogue is fascinating, but it is often a conversation across a vast cultural and chronological divide, one where we risk speaking our own language over the whispers of the past. The anachronism lies not in the seal, but in the application of a 21st century technological framework to a 5,000-year-old spiritual icon. This does not invalidate the wonder these objects inspire. Instead, it reframes the mystery. The real question shifts from, is this a spaceship, to a deeper, more profound inquiry. Why does this ancient symbol of a horned lord speaking to animals feel so resonant, so strangely modern to us? Perhaps it is because it touches on universal themes, the search for harmony, the desire for mastery over one's environment, and the awe of the natural world, themes that are as urgent in our age of spacecraft as they were in the age of stone seals. The artifact challenges us to listen more carefully, to learn the symbolic language of its creators before we translate it into our own. In doing so, we may discover that the connection it offers is not to a forgotten technology, but to a timeless human state of wonder, perfectly composed within a square inch of carved stone. A king list can be the most dangerous artifact of all. In the Archaeological Museum of Palermo, Italy, rests a dark, fragmented slab of black basalt, its surface etched with the meticulous records of a vanished bureaucracy. This is the Palermo Stone, a royal chronicle from Egypt's 5th dynasty, carved around 4,400 years ago. It lists the names of pharaohs, records annual Nile flood heights, and documents significant events year by year, reign by reign. It is a dry administrative document, the kind of record that typically anchors history in solid, verifiable fact. But as one reads upward, back through time before the first dynasties, the entries shift. The names become those of semi-divine rulers, spirits, and gods, and their reigns stretch not for decades, but for spans of time that defy belief, periods of 10,000, 20,000, even 36,000 years. This is not a hidden artifact from a disputed dig. It is an official, state-sanctioned record, and it calmly states that the history of Egypt before the human pharaohs was a saga lasting hundreds of thousands of years. Palermo Stone presents a unique kind of chronological challenge. It is an out-of-place artifact not of material, but of recorded time. Mainstream Egyptology interprets these immense spans as mythological, a way for the ancient Egyptians to express the concept of a deep, sacred past that existed before the ordered world of men. The long reigns symbolize the era of the gods, the time when the world was shaped and the principles of kingship and cosmic order were established. In this view, the stone is a theological document as much as a historical one, blending the human and the divine to create a continuous legacy of authority for the living pharaoh. He was not just a man, but the latest in an unbroken line stretching back to the dawn of creation itself. This interpretation is coherent and culturally sensitive, fitting perfectly within the Egyptian world, where myth and history were not separate categories, but intertwined strands of the same truth. Yet the stone's very existence as a formal record forces a deeper, more unsettling question. What if we are reading it with the wrong expectations? We approach it with our modern, secular distinction between factual history and symbolic myth. But for the scribes who carved it, these immense numbers may have represented a different kind of truth, a transmitted memory of a past so remote it had blurred into legend. Could these vast reigns point to a genuine but now lost understanding of prehistory? Some researchers looking for patterns have suggested the numbers might not be literal years, but could represent something else like lunar cycles, seasonal ceremonies, or even generations, which were then later misinterpreted or mythologized. Alternatively, the stone might be preserving a faint echo of a much older tradition, one that spoke of a time when different beings or a different order of humanity existed on Earth for epochs we can scarcely comprehend. This artifact challenges us from within the heart of the accepted historical record. It does not ask us to believe in ancient airplanes or forgotten batteries, but to reconsider how ancient cultures themselves measured and remembered the passage of time. The Palermo Stone suggests that the Egyptians perceived their own past not as a short, recent ascent from barbarism, but as a vast, sloping plain of time, filled with the footsteps of giants and the whispers of gods. This perspective fundamentally alters the scale of their own story. While our textbooks might give them 3,000 years of dynastic history, their own royal archives claimed a heritage hundreds of times longer. This forces a humbling realization. The standard timeline we rely on is, in many ways, a modern construction, a framework we have built from pottery shards, carbon dates, and king lists that we have trimmed to fit our scientific model. The Palermo Stone is a piece of evidence that refuses that trim. It is a formal complaint filed by the ancients themselves against our shortened version of their past. Ultimately, the stone's greatest lesson may be about the nature of history itself. It reminds us that every culture has its own depth of memory, its own way of weaving the tangible and the transcendent into a narrative that explains who they are. When we find an object that contradicts our timeline, we often assume the object is wrong or a hoax or a mystery, but the Palermo Stone, sitting proudly in a museum, asks us to consider a different possibility. Perhaps the contradiction is not in the stone, but in our own limited conception of what the past is allowed to contain. It invites us to listen, not as dismissive scientists, but as attentive students, to a story that begins not with a kingdom, but with an epoch, a story written in stone by people who believed with absolute certainty that their history was immeasurably long and that their gods had ruled for millennia under the same unblinking sun. From the depths of the sea to layers of ancient rock, these 25 artifacts present a mosaic of historical anomalies that refuse to fit neatly into our textbooks. Each one stands as a testament to the profound and unsettling gaps in our understanding, a physical whisper from the past asking us to reconsider everything we think we know. While some of these objects may indeed be modern hoaxes, clever misidentifications, or breathtaking natural formations, their collective weight does something more important than prove a single theory. It invites us to adopt a posture of humility and relentless curiosity. The true value of these out-of-place artifacts is not that they provide definitive answers, but that they persistently ask brilliant, disruptive questions. They remind us that history is not a closed book, its final chapter written and sealed by experts. It is an ongoing investigation, a living dialogue between the present and every layer of the past. A single discovery, buried in a cave or resting on a seabed, still holds the latent power to unravel an established narrative that seemed unshakable just yesterday. This is the thrilling, uncertain heart of historical exploration. Whether these objects are evidence of lost civilizations, fragments of forgotten technologies, or simply monuments to the incredible, untapped ingenuity of ancient peoples, their ultimate purpose is the same. They challenge us, they push us to keep questioning, to keep exploring, and to remain willing to re-evaluate the grand, complex story of humanity. Our timeline is not set in stone, it is written in sand, and each new tide of discovery can reshape its contours. So we are left with one final, open-ended wonder. What will we unearth next that forces us to pick up the eraser and rewrite the chapters we thought were complete? The next great mystery is waiting, hidden in plain sight or sealed beneath the earth for the curious mind to find it. We would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these artifacts intrigues you the most? Do you have a favorite historical mystery? Share your ideas in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the edges of history, subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest unsolved puzzles. The past has more secrets to tell, and the story is